have never been to Oklahoma, but if film is any indication, it doesn't seem like the best place to be. Twisters taught me that no number of hot meteorologists can save the Sooner State from tornadoes. Killers of the Flower Moon taught me that apparently they're really racist. And this season's LSU game, which I watched like a movie, showed me that they can't even win a football game. Not too much on the SEC, Sophia. That article explains, in Vice in January, that thankfully, one brave, red-blooded American had the courage to take a stand against the most pressing issue facing Oklahoma today. Furries! Representative Justin Humphrey introduced a bill that would require public schools to call animal control services on kids who identified as furries. So I'm sure you're wondering, does Representative Humphrey look absolutely ridiculous? Of course he does! So, out of sheer spite for Representative Humphrey, I'd like to issue a brief content warning for this speech. The next 9 minutes is going to be all about furries. So if you've got a problem with that, too bad! The door is locked. According to firstscience.com, a website developed by a group of scholars dedicated to better understanding furries that is now permanently ingrained in my search history, furries are a group of people interested in anthropomorphic animals. Now, most furries develop an anthropomorphized character for themselves called a fursona, but furries come in all shapes, sizes, species, and smells. And I'm not just talking about furries because there is a FNAF movie coming out this year. Standing up for furries requires resisting this freak's culture war. So today, let's debunk misconceptions about furries, examine their effects, and devise solutions. And yeah, I'm going to make fun of this unusual hobby a little in this speech because, duh, but I'm mostly going to make fun of people who hate them. Because trust, my uncle's Civil War obsession is just as weird as my cousin's fursona. Speaking of weird, Republicans! Like Pizzagate, the Iran-Contra scandal, and my grandparents' thoughts on Timothy Chalamet, furry phobia originates from right-wing conspiracy theories. And they stem from two misconceptions that I'd like to call the Jared from Subway special. Sex and kids! First, Republicans think being a furry is a sex thing. LGBTQ Nation recounts on April 8th of 2024 that as the Illinois state legislature was considering a bill to change statutory language from, get this, he or she to they, Representative Andrew Chesney crashed the fuck out and began screaming about how furries are sex freaks, prompting his colleagues to literally point and laugh until they sat down. Now, in reality, Fur Science quantifies that only 10% of furries use their fursona for sex purposes, while 85% engage in the community for artistic or educational reasons. But also, the hypocrisy. I mean, come on, Andrew. Matt Gaetz diddles kids. The RNC was Grindr's biggest payday until the Wicked premiere, and Trump's been to more Diddy parties than party caucuses. Hot meat kettle. But second, Republicans think furries are indoctrinating kids. CNN explains in 2020 that over 20 Republican candidates cited a false rumor that public schools were putting litter boxes in bathrooms for kids who identified as cats, which Representative Scott Jensen of Minnesota used to justify the conclusion that schools are, quote, conditioning kids to pee like cats. Well, Scott, how about you identify as a cow and touch grass? First, this never happened. Second, Fur Science quantifies that only 5% of furries even feel a spiritual connection to animals, much less pop a squat in litter boxes. But third, and here's the kicker, Vice quantifies that Republican lawmakers are 3 times more likely than furries to be child molesters. Yeah, laugh. Oh, and does Scott Jensen look like he sniffs toes? if you can believe it. I've been told that this speech is too mean to Republicans. And to that, I say 4 things. 1, womp womp. 2, it's not Democrats who are screaming about him on Fox. 3, but 4, they've got a point. I mean, if I showed up to the DNC in cat ears, I'd get neutered, Joe Biden would disintegrate, and Nancy Pelosi would find another reason to ban TikTok. Much like Tame Impala, furry phobia is no longer niche, and affects 2 groups. Furries themselves, and the entire queer community. First, furries themselves. CNN explains in 2018 that even though the conspiracy theories used to justify persecution come from the alt-right, because furries aren't well represented in media, furry phobia has become ingrained in pop culture, to the point that even traditionally marginalized groups like the queer community think furries are weirder than weird. Leave it to the Regina George days to make an alpha feel like a lone wolf. Her science quantifies that 65% of furries report feeling discriminated against, not just by the alt-right, but by mainstream society. Furries who come out experience harassment and discrimination, while the sigmas who don't become more alienated from mainstream society, creating a feedback loop where furries become more and more misunderstood. But next, furry phobia affects the entire queer community. Pink News explains in 2024 that the logic behind furry phobia mirrors homophobia and transphobia. You're a freak, so we don't like you. Conveniently, that was also what my team told me when I told them I was going to write my ADS about furries. Shame them. But that same guy who proposed the animal control bill went on to pass a bill banning gender-affirming care in Oklahoma. And it's the same with all these right-wing freaks. They justify discrimination by singling out furries to show how evil the queer community is, as if Freddy Fazbear is the new Saddam Hussein. In the past, I've gotten a ballot on this speech that said if I had to rank this speech in terms of cultural relevance, it would be dead last. All right, Randy, 2 things. Number 1, look at me now, loser. But second, standing up for furries is important right now because standing up for furries means standing up for all of us. And as he pointed out, Griner, look at me, we're all gay! We're a part of a culture war. So it's time to pick a side. So on that note, gear up, PKD, because you're getting drafted. Things are about to get rough. Oh, just wait. Wait for it to get loud. Look at me now, Mom! And if you're disappointed, no, look! The Scripps College says I am a thought leader and a storyteller, and I'm opening doors for the next generation! Make it known! Ask not what you can do for the foxhole, but what the foxhole can do for you. My first battle strat, the woke agenda. The International Anthropomorphic Research Association explains in 2019 that changing minds about furries requires changing our criteria for acceptance. They explain that one of the reasons why gay men, for example, have become more accepted over the past 20 years is because we increasingly realize that they are, like Lady Gaga said, born this way. Now, obviously, people don't come out of the womb in a fursuit, but in addition to eating cats and turning frogs gay, being woke requires us to accept furries regardless of whether we understand them, just because they're human. Well, kind of. And if you are a furry, woof! Thanks for the Joe Biden fan art. Now, my next solution requires us to go a step further and embrace and love furry culture. Psychology Today explains in 2024 that engaging in the cultural practices of marginalized groups actively builds empathy with those communities. So, on that note, take a fun furry item out of my my neat Freddy Fazbear grab bag and feel your furry fantasy for the next 50 seconds because this shit was expensive. You get cat ears. Hell, they're all gonna get cat ears, but a few more. Here, look, Mike the Tiger, I'm from LSU. Who wants one? Raise your hand, raise your hand. I'm not gonna reach you, get real. I'll even give one of you a persona. Now, at this tournament, I've given half of the people in this room a persona. I've been lobbied before this round, but let me tell you a story. I received another ballot from that same guy, Randy, asshole. And Randy told me, I bet your coach was really mad when you picked this topic. I would have been, okay. But my coach is in this room. Jonathan, raise your hand. Jonathan's catchphrase is awesome possum. It rhymes and it sounds like a villain's catchphrase from one of the wacky races, but I think it is hilarious. So, use Jonathan as a model for what it means to be a furry. And LSU administration, get this on record. This means that the LSU communication department, quote me on this, is full of rodents. Look, he's agreeing. But if Jonathan's not enough, and you want to support furries outside of this round, check out this neat worksheet. It includes some links to some fun, but questionable furry fan art, a list of furry vocab words, and a possum crossword. Learn about furries, love furries, be a furry. Now, if you've taken anything away from this speech, it should be that the Republican freaks who hate furries look weirder than the furries themselves. But after debunking misconceptions about furries, examining their effects, and devising solutions, hopefully we understand how freaky furry phobia is. So, now that you're all converted, I'll leave you with the wise words of Minu. Meow. Minu is my cat.